When we solve one variable equations, there are some special things that can happen, and we're going to look at the different types of solutions that we can actually get to an equation. When we've been solving equations so far, we've always gotten one solution, but that's actually not always what happens. So when we're talking about the solution of an equation, what that really means is that we're finding the value that makes the equation true. There's three different things that can happen. Equations can have one solution, which is what we've seen so far, but they can also have what we call infinite solutions, or they can have no solution at all. So there's three different scenarios of things that can happen, and we'll go through an example of each one today and why that happens. So let's start with the one solution. This, if you have not printed this out, this does have kind of a table set up, so you may want to pause and kind of set up a table. I don't think you necessarily have to write down all of the words that are already there for you if you're not working on a printed version, but at least take some of the notes of the things that we're writing down. So we're going to fill out that one solution column first. I'm going to start on the left. When we say there's one solution, what that means is that there is only one value that could possibly make the equation true. So literally there is one number that you could substitute in place of your variables that will make that equation true. And what that means is when we find our solution, that sometimes when we substitute that number in, we'll get something that's true. The only time it will be true is for that one particular number. So it's only going to be true one time when we substitute in our one particular answer. And this example, this is going to look exactly like what we've been doing. So we've got a two-step equation right here. 4x plus 6 equals 18. So we know if we were going to try to solve this, zoom way in, I would subtract 6 on both sides first. And when I subtract 6, I'll get 4x equals 18 minus 6 is 12. And then I would divide by 4. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So I get x equals 3. So this is what we've been dealing with, and what that means is that 3 is literally the only number that exists that will make that equation true. So it's not, if we plug in any number into that equation, it won't be true always, just when we plug in 3 specifically, because that is our solution or our answer. As you start to do more of these kind of special cases, you're going to start seeing you'll notice some patterns and ways that you can kind of look at an equation and know what's going to happen. Our kind of hint for these is that at the very end, when you're solving, your end result will still have a variable. So it'll still have a number or a letter there. And it will also have a solution. So when we solve these, we get it down to just, x equals a number. And that's what we're used to working with. The new part is going to be the next two cases. So for infinite solutions, so think about the word infinity. You've heard the word infinity before. That means it's a concept of going forever and ever and ever. Infinite solutions means that any value will make the equation true. So these are special equations where you could put any number in for your variable and it will be true. So we say any number will work is really what that means. So when we think about checking the solution, you are always going to get something that works, no matter if you plug in a positive number, a negative number, 0, a decimal, a fraction. Doesn't matter what you put in, it will always be true. So we could say that this equation, no matter what we substitute in, will be true every time. And so here's an example of that. We've got 5x plus 15 equals 5x plus 15. So if we were solving this, I would probably want to get the x's combined first. I notice there are x's on both sides. So I might subtract 5x on both sides. But then check out what happens. If I subtract 5x on both sides, I get 15 equals 15 because my 5x's are both gone because we subtracted 5x on both sides. So when I get something like 15 equals 15, think about that. That is something that's true. 15 is equal to 15. A number is equal to itself. And when we get something like that, when we get a true statement at the very end of something is equal to itself, that tells us that any number is going to make that equation true. It does not matter what number you substitute in there, they will all work. And now notice kind of your hint for this, when we're solving, our variables canceled out on both sides. So we subtracted and the x's just totally went away. But what we're left with are two sides of our equations that do look equal. So like 15 equals 15. Those are two things that are equal. You may have noticed early in that problem, if you look really carefully, and this is where if you'll pay attention to details, sometimes you can just notice this right off the bat before you actually solve. The left and the right side were exactly the same. 5x plus 15 and 5x plus 15. So when we have the two sides that are exactly the same, we will get infinite solutions. So then our last option that can happen is when we have no solution. When we have no solution, that means that there are no values that will make that equation true. Nothing will make it ever work. When we have something like that, what we're dealing with, again, is no number, no positive, negative, fraction, decimal, zero, nothing is going to make that equation work. So no matter what you try to substitute in, you will never be able to get something that makes the equation true. So it will not ever be true. And now let's look at an example of why that might happen. We've got 4x plus 8 equals 4x plus 3. And so again, I noticed there are x's on both sides. I'd like to get those together. So I would subtract this 4x. If I do it on the left, I've also got to do it on the right. But when I do 4x minus 4x, I'm just going to be left with 8 equals 3. Now think about that. We just wrote 8 equals 3, which we know is not true. 8 and 3 are not the same thing. So that is something that is false. So I usually like to put a little x next to it if it doesn't work. That's not true. So there is no solution. No number is going to make that equation true. When we, kind of your hint for when this happens is your variables will typically cancel out. So when I took away that 4x, it went away on both sides. And then we get something that they're not equal. The two sides do not look equal. And I'll give you another helpful hint. If you pay close attention, this equation, both sides had a 4x, but the number that we were adding was different. So think about if we have 4x and we add 8, there's no way that can be equal to taking that same amount, 4x, and adding 3. It just doesn't make sense. And those are the kinds of problems that will give you a no solution. So we'll practice this more in class, and then you'll also have another video to go over some more practice with these kind of special cases.